Hello, Bitcoin home miners. Two Sats here, and I want to give a quick thank you to our sponsors before we jump into another amazing episode here on the Home Mining Podcast. First up, if you want to stack Sats the right way in the US or Canada, you've got to check out today's sponsor, Bitcoin Well. It's a fully non-custodial platform. It's straight to your own wallet using on-chain or Lightning. They never custody your funds. That's the way it should be. So use our link to join Bitcoin Well. You'll also earn bonus points with every Bitcoin buy you make when you sign up using our link. And those points are actually redeemable for coin tosses into their Bitcoin wishing well, which gets you free sats. You can even win up to 1 million sats in the wishing well, which is amazing. Or you can save up your points and use them for a DumaX Gamma from Solo Satoshi. So just go ahead and scan the QR code on the screen or hit the link in the description and join me on Bitcoin Well to start stacking sats today. Now, during this episode, have your Lightning wallets ready because we'll also be giving away some free sats, courtesy of Bitcoin Well. And if you're ready to go ahead and start your Bitcoin home mining journey with us, go ahead and grab a DumaX Gamma or a NerdQX++ from the Solo Satoshi store using our link or by scanning the QR code you see on the screen now. Listeners of the Home Mining Podcast that use this link have access to an exclusive discount code. All you got to do is go to the store using our link, put whatever you want in your cart, and when you go to checkout, use code 2SATS, the number 2, SATS, and you can snag yourself a nice little discount on your purchase. We really appreciate you supporting the podcast. I know you're going to enjoy this episode, and let's dig in to this next episode. Solo mining is the embodiment of the original dream, a defiant act of individual sovereignty where one person, one node, and one miner take a stand against centralized control. We don't just mine for profit, we mine for principle. We mine for ourselves and for each other and for the unyielding spirit at Bitcoin's core. Join us as we dig in and hold the line. This is the Home Mining Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Mining Podcast by Solo Satoshi. I'm your host, 2Sats, and I'm joined today by a legend in the home mining community, the man who is one part of the holy trinity of open source hardware and software that's going to be revolutionizing the home mining space, Michael Schmid, affectionately known by everyone in the community as Schnitzel. It's been a year in the making. We finally got the man himself on. Excited to deep dive on what he's building. He is the lead engineer behind Libreboard, which is, he's going to tell you all about it, but it is the open source control board that is going to drive the revolution forward. So, Michael Schnitzel, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, Tuzat. Hello. Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, you've built a ton since we hosted you on the home mining space on Twitter almost a year ago. And so let's just do a little refresher for the audience. Hopefully everybody listening to this, it is pretty niche, knows about you and what you're doing, but let's just start from the top, a bit about who you are and what you're building.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, as you mentioned, my name is Michael, or people know me more under my name Schnitzel. I'm originally from Switzerland. I live in the US now because it's actually easier to build houses and build home mining systems here. That's not the reason, but it's one of the good sides. Yeah, I've been in Bitcoin quite a long time, but honestly did not understand the first couple of years. And recently became pretty upset that there is no real good open source hardware and software in Bitcoin mining. Specifically, right, if you want to heat your house, you want to connect these miners to systems that they are actually never meant to be connected to, you run into a ton of issues and blockers and all kind of problems. And so far, me and a lot of other people have been always trying to work around the hardware and the software with additional relays and pumps and sensors and all that kind of stuff. But the problem was really the hardware and software, right? The actual miners never really fit to what we're trying to do. And so after years of trying to work with them, we were like, me and a couple of other people, I was like, why don't we just build our own hardware? Like, everything is becoming a lot easier to build hardware, to modify them. And so, yeah, that's what the 256 Foundation set up to do, is to build a complete open source Bitcoin mining hardware and software stack so that everybody can build whatever they want. So if you want to build from your small DumaX that just sits on your desk and looks good and maybe finds a block, to maybe you want to heat your house and your pool, up to massive industrial scale. That's really the range that we're trying to build hardware for. The idea is not to actually sell the hardware. The idea is really to create the open source files that then people can take and build on top of it. So, right, people always ask, like, when can I buy this? And we jokingly answer, never, from us. And I think that's when sometimes people, like, they're confused, because usually in Bitcoin hardware, the company that makes it also sells it, and that's going to be very different. So how we do stuff, and we can go deeper into that, why that is and things like that. But that's what we're working on. Yeah, and we roughly started a year ago, and today we have stuff to show off, which is super exciting and crazy. Yeah, how fast it all happened.
Yeah, a lot of progress in a small amount of time, and I think it's easy to lose sight of the fact that you guys are building so much behind the scenes and starting from like a space that's notoriously closed off, right? From the ASIC distribution and the bottlenecks and all the proprietary bullshit that comes along with all of that, to get to where you are now is nothing short of, just a massive undertaking and a massive feat of accomplishment. So I think this episode is going to serve as sort of like bringing people up to date, letting them know, first of all, if they don't know, that this exists, and that the future of open source mining and open source hardware, home mining, sovereignty within your stack, right? From your node to your control board to your hash boards, everything to your firmware, also very important, is all going to be open source and controllable by you. And that is incredibly motivating and exciting. And so I think this is just so exciting of a time to be able to bring this to the public's awareness if they're not already aware. And I'm glad that it's you that we get to do that with.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's crazy because like 2-3 years ago, we always talked about, wouldn't be great that we have our own hardware where we can just build form factors or systems that really fit our needs. But at that point, it felt impossible. And with really a couple of small steps over a long time, to be honest, and obviously the DumaX has played a massive part in this, we're now at a point that we're very, very close to build Bitcoin mining hardware that can reach the same amount of heat output or terahash output, doesn't matter which one you want to optimize for, like a regular S19 or an S21 type of things. And I think it's interesting to talk to people about this, because like you're saying, a lot of people are not aware, or they think it's impossible, because this market for such a long time has been under the thumbs of the Bitmain of the world. I mean, they own 80%, I think it is roughly, of the market, and they just dominated the market. They define the form factor, they define the hardware, the heat output, the terahash output, and nobody was able to change this. And now we're really, really close to build miners on that scale already. And of course, we already have a lot of smaller miners, the DumaX sizes, with 1, 2, 4, up to 8 chips already that are completely open source and anybody can just build.
Yeah, and you know what I think trips a lot of people up is, from the outside, if they're not a home miner already and they hear about Bitcoin mining, they look at Bitcoin mining, they see that it's just for the rich, it's for the mega corporations. And of course, anything that anybody does is going to be for profit only, purely motivated by, greed and profit and sort of like the fiat bullshit of big companies like Bitmain or some of these other mining conglomerates. But then I hear people like you talk, and when I talk to people like Scott and Tyler Stevens and the great people at the space and things like that, you're just talking about building cool shit that meets your needs and that you want to geek out on. And you're like, I want to be able to do this, but I can't, because the thing that I love to play with doesn't allow me to do what I want to do with it. And that is such a preposterous like limitation. It's so irritating.
Yeah.
And you guys are like, okay, fuck that. We're tearing that down and we're doing exactly what we want to do with it. And then on top of that, you're saying, go ahead and manufacture it and sell it and you profit off it if you want to. I just want to be able to do the shit I want to do with my hardware and my software firmware stack.
Yeah.
And I think that for me personally, ideologically is so satisfying, philosophically very satisfying, because you're not just out there for profit. You might not even be out there for any profit. You're just building stuff that you want to be able to tinker with. And to me, that is the original ethos and sort of cypherpunk spirit at the heart of Bitcoin that is so lost now. Even it's starting to get lost in the mining space because, people are going from, well, we love the BitX project to, OSMU is a scam and 256 Foundation is bad and all this crap that you hear, and let's just manufacture Dogecoin miners and all of this garbage. It's so easy for people to get diverted and lost in the weeds. And I just love when people are kind of, after my own heart. They're sticking to the original ethos of Bitcoin mining, which is let's build cool shit because that's what we want to experiment and play with.
Yeah, no, you're hitting the nail on the head there. I think it's really interesting. I come from the software world, right? And I feel this revolution that we're seeing in the open source hardware world already happened like 20 years ago. Right? Everything today, I really truly believe you cannot spend probably an hour or two in your life to not touch any open source software. Like your phone, your computer, your car runs Linux, like even your washing machine today runs a Linux on it, right? And so in that world, it's completely accepted that open source is built by a couple of people without any profit in mind. Yes, there are companies that are also supporting and they're profiting from it, but right, it's like we're all together working on this system, and we have many of these projects. There's Linux, there's Kubernetes, there's all these other ones that are massive projects with companies making billions of dollars with it. Like think about Red Hat, IBM, and like all these ones. They're all, and even Microsoft today, they're the biggest contributors in terms of time and money into the Linux Foundation, which seems crazy. If you go back 20 years ago, that Microsoft is going to be one of the biggest open source contributors, people would laugh at you that this is the case. But here we are, like in 2026, and that's the case. And so that's my world that I'm coming from, a world where companies that are competitors work together on a piece of software. Everybody contributes and anybody can contribute. You don't even have to work at these companies. In the hardware space, though, that's obviously a lot harder, right? Because, first of all, the hardware was not accessible. Now, today, with luckily all these companies that can very easily build, can make you boards, PCB boards, right? That used to be thousands of dollars to just make one of them. Now I can make my own design, I can upload it, and I can order one for $10 and I have it in 2 weeks. Like that's unheard of. So that obviously unlocked a lot. The other one is just the miniaturization of computers in general. Just the demand for a lot more chips and a lot more hardware just obviously brought the price down. And the other thing is that a lot of companies actually realize that there's a massive market to just sell chips individually. Right? The fact that I can go to Texas Instruments, I can go to DigiKey and just buy one chip. That used to be, you could buy a reel of 10,000 only. But the fact that these companies like DigiKey or others or Mouser in the US, but there's other ones all over the world that sell you one chip if you really want only one, that did not exist either. And then the last thing is all the support from the software, right? The open source tools like KiCad that are on par as these modern or proprietary tools to make PCB design, schematics, test them, analyze them. And obviously now, in the last year, also the capabilities of AI that I can just also ask my AI, hey, I want to build this hardware. Can you help me make a schema? And it's not perfect yet. Like we're testing a lot in the 256 Foundation, but it's a lot better than it ever was. And I think these are all the things, these are all these pillars that all independently had to happen. So now it is possible to make open source hardware. And I think it's just for a lot of people, they haven't seen that yet. They maybe see one or two of the pillars, but all pillars together that allows you now, for like me, by myself, make an open source hardware, get it produced, put chips on it, either in my own home, or I can find people or companies that assemble them, get shipped home. I plug in a Raspberry Pi board, right? It's not a full Raspberry Pi, but a little Raspberry Pi, and I have a full-on computer with all the ports and the inputs and output that I specifically need. And the whole thing cost me less than $100. Is like, again, 20 years ago, unthinkable. But here we are today. It's happening, and I think that's just a lot of people that like, yeah, they are still stuck in this old world that they're saying this is either incredibly expensive or impossible. What I do want to say, though, and I think there's also some of the critics, there's a reason why there's the word hard in hardware, right? Like I mentioned, I'm from the software. And so with software, I can build software, I can deploy it, I can give it to somebody if something is broken, I can just deploy a new version on the server, and like I can fix bugs within 2 or 3 minutes if it needs to be. With hardware, you're talking weeks, right? Because you need to test it, you need to ship it off, you get it, you only get the PCB, then you need to assemble it, and then you need to test everything. So like in my test rig, I need to test every single piece of the hardware, and then I need to ship it to the person. So the cycles of software that are taking 5 minutes, in hardware, it takes a month or 2. And that's just why these things take longer. But it's possible. And that's the thing that really caused us to come together and saying, let's go on this crazy journey to create a completely open source mining hardware and software.
Yeah, it's difficult, but it's just so necessary. And I'm just so excited by what's been accomplished and what it's going to mean for the everyday home hash rate heater or the home miner. It's fundamentally changing the world. And there's such a small percentage of the world that truly grasps Bitcoin, and then there's an even smaller percentage that grasp what's going on with the hash rate heating revolution, the home mining space, everything like that. And it just really amps me up. It really inspires me. It's so exciting. And your work is part of this kind of holy trinity, this trifecta of things that is going to change the landscape. And so you're a grantee of the 256 Foundation, and that is so for the Libreboard. And then we have Mujina, which is the firmware, and then we have the Ember One.
Correct. Plus, there's a fourth one, actually. There's also Hydrapool, which is a pool.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so if you want, I'm happy to go through each of the projects, like what they do and why they exist.
I would love that. I think that'd be great to have it all in one place for everybody.
Yeah. So the idea really, for anybody that has followed along this, the idea of this foundation was basically memed into existence. So there used to be, or there's still a podcast called the Pod 256 between Eco Alchemist and Rod. And they just had a podcast about mining, about like this home, crazy people like me that decide to install a miner inside their house to heat it, and all the war stories we had, like in my case, right, 4 of my S9s overheated and they melted pipes, and just like we talked about all of this. But the discussion was always at these, in the pod, we always ended up is like, wouldn't it be great if we have our own hardware? And what Pod 256 always did was that you could send hash rate to support the pod. So instead of sending money, you just point your hash rate of your DumaX or whatever. You point to a pool account of the 256, and all the sats that were mined then went to the pod. And that was basically how the pod got a little donations. Like we're talking about a couple of dollars per month. Like this is not a lot of money that they made, but that was always the fun. But they always, this idea then came up of, we should do this telehash, where, right, it comes back to these tele shows where you can call in and people show off stuff and you can donate, raise funds at the same time, and you have the bar in the back. It's like, oh, we're close to 1 million and celebration and stuff. Like all the noob, all people below, younger than 20 people have 20 years old have no idea. But like the old folks in the room, they all know what we're talking about. And so there was this idea: why don't we do a telehash where people can instead of again sending money, we do like an 8 hour where they can send their hash rate. And the first telehash happened. This is now 1.5 years ago, and they, crazy enough, found a block during that telehash. They solo mined. There was a big discussion: should we solo mine or should we pool mine? They decided to solo mine, and true and behold, I think 6 hours in, they found a block. And at that point, Bitcoin was $300,000 worth. Bitcoin was $100,000. So with 3.125, they made like $330,000 from 1 second to the other. And suddenly, this idea of like, we should build our own hardware became a thing. So the 256 Foundation was founded. Eco came up with these 4 projects. But that's really the history. Like, that's big. We basically memed this into existence, and the Bitcoin network, whoever Satoshi is, she, they, him, whatever, blessed us with a block and made it possible to basically, if you want to say, spiritually fix itself, right? So the Bitcoin network decided that open source mining hardware is required, and it gave the 256 Foundation a block. And with that, these 4 projects came up. And the 4 projects are, first of all, it's a hashboard. So think about a DumaX. We call it the Ember One, and it has 12 chips on it. So instead of a single DumaX, it has 1 or 2 chips. We're talking 12 chips. But it's also only a hashboard, right? A DumaX is basically the hashboard or the ASIC chip and the controller in one. So you can just put it somewhere. But if we talk about bigger scale, it doesn't make sense anymore to combine the control board and the hashboard. You want to have them separated on separate hardware, because the thing that actually mostly breaks is the hashboard. Or the hashboard is the thing that you want to upgrade. Or that's where you have scale, right? If you want to have 1,000 watts or 3,000 watts or 10,000 watts, the thing that you need to change is the hashboard. The control board you don't need to change. And so that's why we're separating these things. You have a control board and a hashboard, and in the 256 Foundation, the hashboard is Ember One. It uses right now S19 chips, just because these are the ones that we have the best understood, the best reverse engineer, because, right, there is no data sheets for these Bitmain chips, so we had to reverse engineer everything. And through the DumaX project that used all these Bitmain chips, the S19 chips are right now are the best understood. There's also S21 chips that we're also using for DumaX, but for now, that's what we used. And so that's the first hardware project. And this is by Scott. So he's the instigator of the DumaX, and he was the perfect person to build that hashboard. And it exists. We're now, I think, in revision 6 already, because these hashboards are not easy to build, right? You need to think about power distribution and heat dissipation and all that kind of stuff. One of the special things that we decided is that the communication protocol between the hashboards and the control boards is going to be USB-C. All other miners today, they use some kind of ribbon cable. For anybody that's ever seen a miner, this is a proprietary communication protocol. We said, nope, we want to standardize on USB-C, because everything already talks USB-C. And that's actually a really cool thing, is you don't actually need to use the control board of what I'm building, the Libreboard. You can plug in this hashboard to any computer. You could even connect it to your phone, and you could mine from it. So it already that opens up massive amount of capabilities. Yeah, so that's the first project, the Ember One. I'm gonna pause if you have any questions about that.
No, please. That's a great intro.
Cool.
To the Ember One, and then
the
we'll
next
explain
project,
how the other 3 kind of layer on top.
Yes. So the next one is the control board, right? These hashboards, they only have USB-C. They don't have Wi-Fi. They don't have Ethernet. They have no idea. All they can do is receive jobs from a firmware, but this firmware needs to run somewhere, and that's called the control board. And the control board in the 256 Foundation is the Libreboard. It's basically and purposeful built control board for Bitcoin mining. Means we could have just used the Raspberry Pi. It would have worked. The problem is, myself, right, as a home miner, I have specific needs around connecting all kind of different sensors or actors to the control board. So we're talking pumps. If you want to heat water, you want to talk sensors because you need to measure either water temperature or room temperature. You want to have like safety mechanisms like relays to disconnect miners. So these are like just the standard things, but we're also talking about displays or knobs to change it. Like think about the thermostat on the wall. So we need all these different capabilities to interact with the miner. The other thing is the miner itself or the control board needs obviously connections to the hash board. So that's USB. So a Libreboard by default has 4 USB-Cs already on it. A regular Raspberry Pi only has 2. So we're already adding 4. Plus, we also added a fan controller. So because the miners need to be cooled in some cases, if you don't use immersion or hydro, you have fans and they need to be controlled and modulated based on the speed and all that stuff. So we have a fan controller on it as well. And then the last thing is a Raspberry Pi usually uses 5 volts. 5 volt is not enough or is not very common. Usually you have 12 volt, maybe a bit more. So we actually have a voltage regulator, so you can put 12 to 18 volts into the Libreboard, and by the way, also into the Ember One. So that opens up again a lot of possibilities, from using direct to solar if you want to. You could connect it to your car or a generator, or of course you can connect it to 110 volts, to 40 volts, or either 380, 3-phase. In the end, you just need 12 volts. And the really cool thing is actually specifically these S9s, like they are now a couple of years old, and you almost get them for free. They all come with a 12-volt power supply. So, so we try to also make this as pluggable as possible. And with the Libreboard, we decided specifically to not put the CPU and RAM directly on the control board, right? Because this needs to run a Linux. We actually decided to use a Raspberry Pi compute module. So the compute module is just the Raspberry Pi with the CPU and the RAM on it, no connectors at all. There's only 200 pin connector at the bottom, and you plug this into another board. And that is what exactly we're trying to build, right? We want to have specific input and outputs for our needs. That's all the fan controls and all that stuff. And that's what the Libreboard does. So it does not come by default with a CPU and memory. You buy a Raspberry Pi CM5. The really cool thing is also there's other third-party vendors that now make also some. There are now even like RISC-V ones, which is an open source CPU that will also work. So you can choose. And the really cool thing is it allows you to decide how powerful that you actually want your control board to be. If you just want to mine like a regular miner, you don't need a powerful control board or compute module. But if you want to run a whole Bitcoin node and maybe do a home assistant as well, you can just buy a more powerful version, you replace it, and suddenly you have a whole house management system with a Bitcoin mining node and a pool and everything.
Yeah, and the guys at the space, we've had them on, Dylan and Tyler, a few times, and I love the home assistant integration that they've built out. They've done it with closed source Canon devices and the open source home assistant. So it's really cool to be able to see that going to be translated over to the open source world entirely. Things like being able to automate your home and automate your miners along with that is fascinating. And I think one of there's the two sides of this world, right? There's the profit maximalists, the people that are solely interested in mining because they want to hit a block. And then there's the whole, the home heating people, right? The hash rate heating. And this is going to serve both sides of the community incredibly well. It still stands out to me that like the people that are innovating the most are the home heaters, the hash rate heaters, right? And so this ability to have fully customizable open source mining stack to then go and build out your devices with. I think of guys like Twan and Cade Peterson, Softform LLC. Like, what are those guys going to be able to do when they get their hands on what you guys are creating, right? Like, it's just going to be this beautiful, like, coming together of two worlds. Amazing builders with now fully sovereign mining hardware and software. It's just going to be so amazing. So
and that's the important thing about the two hardware projects we have, right? The end goal is not that the way that Scott and I are building this hardware, that this is the only way that it's going to be built. We build like reference implementations, but if you say, hey, I don't need fans because right, I have an immersion system, but I maybe need a default pump connectors. So you could take that hardware. It's completely open source. It's on GitHub. It's KiCad formats. We have bill of materials and all that stuff for it. You can just open it up and just remove things if you don't need it.
Do whatever you want.
It's really a bait. Now, our system will obviously work for a wide variety of things. That's why I talk to a lot of people to understand what they need. But it's really not the idea that the way that we built the hardware is the sole only point, right? It should be a starting point for other people, right? And if you want to build a small miner, or like I said, like what Softwarm does with like garage or like what is it, car washing, heating solutions, and all that different stuff, or a massive miner, right? They might have slightly different changes, but the idea is that we all use the same base, and that's where we're inviting companies like that currently build BitAxes to do their own thing, to use what we have built. I do want to say we're not fully done yet. Like, validation is still going on, so give us a bit of time. But as soon as we're saying, hey, we've now validated all of this and we think it's ready, they can take that design and they can modify it to their needs and obviously the needs of their customers. And that's how it should work. And that's how it works in the software world. If you look at Linux, there are multiple Linux distributions, but they all use the same Linux. And each of the distribution has other use cases, has other end customers, and the companies behind them modify Linux to their needs. And that's exactly how we're seeing this, that there will be multiple versions of the Libreboard out there that serve the specific need of the end customer. And the companies, the producers of them, will take them, can modify it if they want to, and build their own end, like you mentioned, to the profit thing.
Yeah, and that the unlimited capabilities and potentiality of that is what's so exciting, because right now we are just so limited, right? And I'm just excited to see what guys like we just mentioned and SatStack Pleb, like everyone has their unique need for why they run a miner, right? From like greenhouses to a school bus that mines while it's driving down the road, like just endless things out there. And up until these creations come out and actually get their first use in the real world and get put out into the real world, we're just so limited. And it's so sad, because the people that have these great ideas, they're not limited in thinking. They're just limited in what they have access to utilize. And so this is going to unlock all of that. And just, if you think we've seen growth in the home mining space in the last year or two, just wait until this all hits the world in the face. And oh my God, I'm so excited. So before we jump into the last two, the Hydropool and Mujina, you just mentioned like solar integration and the ability to do something. And I'd love if you expanded on how the Libreboard is going to maybe allow solar to play into all of this, because one of my personal goals is to build a Bitcoin citadel, a homestead here in Mexico that is like guerrilla mining, off grid, fully on solar. And, I can't think of anything better than doing it with a fully self-sovereign stack. You have your node, you have solar, so you have all these things that are already very sovereign and guerrilla in mindset. But the hardware can be limiting, and I don't want to just run a BitAxe. I want to run, bigger machines, customized machines. How is the solar going to be unlocked or integrated with what you're building?
Yeah, so with solar, there's I think two main problems that you need to solve. One is most solar systems today basically assume that you have solar panels, right? But the solar panels create low DC voltage that then gets converted into AC, 240 volts or 110 volt, 120 volt, depending on where you are in the world. But then the miners, again, they need DC again, and they actually need it even lower, right? A single chip, an ASIC chip, needs a sub 1 volt voltage. And so we have this problem that with solar, we convert DC, low voltage, into high voltage AC, and then we convert it back into low voltage DC. And if you can get rid of the intermediate step, the basically AC conversion, you have less loss, because in every conversion step, you will have loss. And so what is going to be possible is that if your solar panels generate around 12 to 18 volts, to connect them directly to the hash board and to the control board. So no more inverter, no more AC in the game. You just connect them directly. You might want to still have a battery in between, right? Because the problem is with solar panels, they can sag quite fast. So you and while these voltage regulators that we have on, they're really, really good, they also cannot do magic. So you maybe want to have a little bit of a battery that just stabilizes a little bit, but that's a lot easier than buying whole inverters and all that stuff. And even then, you might still need batteries. So you maybe want to have a little bit of a smoothing battery connected to it, but that can be a regular car battery, right? They're also running on 12 volts. So they can help smooth out this thing, and you basically just connect it, and that's it. And the other that's one problem solved, basically. And the other one is that with solar, right, you have a lot of peaks in terms of how much watts you are generating. And so Libreboard together, and that's where the third project, Mujina, will come in, will be able to react to fluctuations in power a lot faster than a regular miner today. Because a regular miner today, like let's say you use an S19 or an S21 or an M64, whatever, they are built to be put into a data center, plugged in, and basically run almost forever. That's their design choice. That's what Bitmain and WhatsMiner, that's what they're building for. The problem is, right, if you want to do solar, that's not going to be the case. Your miner probably will not stay on the same power level for more than, let's say, half an hour, because something is going to happen. Like somebody plugs something in your housing and suddenly the voltage goes down, or there's a cloud coming, or whatever. Just like the world, life happens. And so the problem is these miners today, because they're meant to run 24/7, if you tell them to change their power setting, what they actually do is they go all the way to zero and start from scratch up again. Because these chips, how they're built, you cannot just fully run them from 0 to 100. You can turn them off from 100 to 0 immediately. That's possible. But you cannot go from 0 to 100. There is a ramp-up time. The problem is, right, if I have a miner, let's say an S19, and I install Brains or Luxor or Vanish, and I tell it, hey, use 3,000 watts, and now you use 2,000, most of them, some of the firmware started to now implement better systems. They go to 0, and they run all 3 hash boards then at 700 watts each to achieve the roughly 2,000 watts. What we're saying is that doesn't make any sense at all. If you have 3 hash boards of each generating 1,000 watts, and now you want to use 2,000 watts, just turn the hash board off, and that's it. And you don't have to go to 0 and go back to 2,000. And I have many people that are trying to do this follow curve of the production of the solar panels, and it looks horrible because every time they change, it goes to 0, goes back up, it goes to 0, goes back up. And that's actually worse because now you have even more fluctuation in a system that is already fluctuating. And so that's really one of the things that open source hardware and software, and specifically Mugina, is going to allow us is to communicate with the solar producers or like these solar systems. Like they know exactly how much power they generate and how much power, let's say, the house uses. All of these systems understand that, and they just need to tell the miner, hey, I'm producing 600 watts over right now, I'm producing 1,000 watts over, or I'm using 0, and the miner can react that within a couple of seconds right away. And that's going to allow these systems where, you can basically run your solar farm, or heat your house with it, or power your house, and the Bitcoin miners are just going to sit on the side and just gobble up all the energy that is not used. Even if you have a battery, let's say the battery is full, they will just gobble up and convert all the additional electricity that you couldn't use, that you would lose otherwise, or sometimes you can give them back to the grid, but they pay you shit for it, right? It will be able to actually make a lot more with that electricity because you convert them into sats, which obviously are also KYC-free.
Yep, always we highlight and love to point out the KYC-free SAT stacking aspect of this. I think it can't be understated. It's extremely important for many people, especially people that are probably, solar and guerrilla mindset and, self-sustaining, self-sovereign type people. It's a nice little bonus that can't really be understated. So, yeah, I'm with you there 100%. And as you said, why sell it back to the grid for nothing when you could be stacking a little bit extra of the best money that mankind has ever known? So
correct.
I'm with you right there. Absolutely. There's no better use of that extra energy. So that's fantastic. Okay, great. So let's move into Mujina and then Hydropool.
So Mugina is basically what we know in terms of what we call a firmware. Every miner that you buy comes with the stock firmware that is extremely limited. Like you can't really do a lot with the stock firmware. There are third-party software. There are the LoxOS, there's Brains, there's Vanish. There's multiple of them out there today. The problem is all of them are not open source. So again, if you want to connect some specific system to it, or let's say your solar panel, or in my case, right, I have a house heating system that I want to communicate with, I cannot do this. So the only way again is to somehow use the APIs that these firmware provide, which unfortunately, these APIs in many times are completely undocumented or not stable. They're changing randomly, to talk to them. And so that was for the longest time the only way. Mujina is basically one of these firmwares that runs on the Libreboard that is completely open source. That means you can change it to whatever you need. You can even talk to your AI to ask it to change it. And so the firmware sits basically between the hash boards and the pool. So the pool, whatever pool you connect to, they give you some type of work. Mujina receives that, converts that into a job, sends it to the hash board. The hashboard does the SHA-256 calculation, sends the result back to the firmware, Mujina, and Mujina then decides, do I need to upload this as a share to the pool or not? So it basically sits in between this. That's the main responsibility of the firmware, is receiving jobs from the pool and convert them into jobs for the hashboards. Mujina, because it lives in this world where you can have a lot of different hashboards. So Mujina is built in a very pluggable fashion that you can actually connect a lot of different hashboards to it. You will be able to actually connect different types of hashboard. So think about, you could connect an S19 and an S21 hashboard at the same time to Mujina. Or we could connect a Watts miner and the Bitmain hashboard at the same time. Like completely unheard of. You can plug them in, and it's also going to be pluggable. That's the other problem with these miners. If you take an S19 and you plug out one of the ribbon cables that they have, the complete miner will freak out and will probably restart and maybe even damage your hardware. And Mujina is built for that out of the box, that you can connect basically whatever you want. You can connect to it, and it will have a plugin how to talk to that hashboard, and will be able to take the jobs from the pool and distribute it across the hashboards to optimize. To optimally use all the different hashboards, right? Because when you connect different ones, it's going to be quite complex, because some of them have a lot of hash rate, others are lost, but that's what Mujina is going to do.
Ooh, bro, the closed source proprietary mining empire is cooked.
Yes. And what I'm really excited about, right? The fact that you can just take this, you can look at the source code, and now really, and we have demonstrated this already, you can use the power of AI agents to actually modify it. So what Scott did, right? So Ryan, he's the developer of Mujina. Scott took Mujina and took Claude code, pointed it at Mujina and said, here is an S19. Can you A, try to figure out how to run Mujina on the control board of the S19, and B, here is there are hashboards connected to it. Here is the DumaX source code that knows how to talk to it, but combine this, and it just ran off. It took him a couple of tries and helping, But a couple of hours later, he had Mujina running on the control board of the S19, talking to the hash boards of the S19, and fully mining on all 3 hash boards. And like that's the crazy thing. That's only possible because it's open source, right? The agents need access, the AI need access to the source code of the BidX and the Mugina and some of the reverse engineering that already was done in order to understand how these communicate. But yeah, just a couple of hours later. So basically what's going to happen, like as soon as we've stabilized this a bit more, I do believe the support of Mugina, of all these different hash boards, it's going to skyrocket. Like we're going to see this number go up, is hashboard supported go up. Because anybody that has a hashboard and a computer can just connect the two and saying, here, go try, right? Because the AI is really good in reverse engineering. They're really good in analyzing binary data to just understand how these hashboards work. Or you can just tell it, hey, this is roughly how we think. Just try different communications. It's just going to go for hours and just try to figure out through the night. It will not stop until it figured out how this communication protocol works.
Oh, and the amount of iterations and things that it can test and try compared to a human or a team of humans that, are all sitting on a, 100 to 200K a year salary that need to be, funded and, on and on. I mean, this is just, you guys lay the groundwork and then you just can let it run wild. And I mean, I'm almost scared to think about what's going to grow from that. Like once that's out there and just kind of being vibe coded and, freely just expanding the possibilities from like Claude Code, which just keeps, I mean, it seems like every day Anthropic is releasing something new out into the world. So it's just going to be a deadly combination. So man, one of the things I really like about you, aside from how brilliant you are, is you seem like a very passionate person. And talking about this with you, like I'm extremely excited for what I'm going to ask you about and like happening. But what do you feel like inside? Can you even put into words when you sit there at night and think about the creation that you're involved in and that these other guys are building, and when it all comes together, when somebody running all 3 or 4 of these things finally hits a block, like what are you going to feel like? Like how fucking amazing is that going to be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't thought about that specific aspect a lot about it, but yeah, it's right for me. How I'm thinking about this is more like it's sad or the status quo is wrong.
Right.
Like I myself have been active now in open source since probably 25 years. And I've seen open source just eat one industry after the other.
Sure.
Like from audio with file sharing to video with video sharing to just servers and computers and software. Like just like it's like for the proprietary software, so open source is just a cancer. Like as soon as it infected one thing, it's just gonna spread and take more and more and more and more and more. And I've been along this way for 25 years. And every time that I see something that is not open source, I will like, this is gonna be open source at one point. Like it's gonna happen. The same with money, right? That's how I, like around COVID when we had so much time to understand and like was wondering like, where does this stimulus package, like how does this work? Like we just dropped $2,000 to everybody. And I realized, oh, this is proprietary money. Like, and we need an open source money. So I'm always looked at Bitcoin from an open source. So that's why I'm so convinced that Bitcoin will become the global monetary standard because it is open source. And because every on the industry that I've ever looked at, as soon as open source just was a little bit part, it ate it up and it became everything open source. And the same I'm also seeing in hardware, right? For me, it's undisputable and undisputable that this will happen. Like that in the future, every Bitcoin miner will run Mugina. That's not even a question. That is what's going to happen. Right? That we will, everything that produces heat, walk through your house and think about everything that produces heat. We will ask ourselves in 20 years, why does this not mine Bitcoin? For example, right? Like there's stupid ideas, but your hair dryer. Like, I mean, sure, it's not going to generate a lot of sats and it doesn't run a lot, but why shouldn't it be, right? If these chips become so cheap, right now they're not. But things will just over time will become a lot cheaper because the demand goes up, therefore the supply goes up, and therefore the price come down. That's just normal supply and demand. And so, yeah, for me, I'm just thinking about this of like, this is going to happen. The current quo is the current status quo is the wrong state or the broken state. And all we're doing is we're trying to fix the state to get there. But yes, it is interesting. Like specifically, if you put just all of 4 of us or the 5 of us that work together on the 256 Foundation, put us together in a room for a couple of hours, and I can tell you, there's this like exuberance of ideas of more things we could do, because as soon as you understand what this unlocks, you cannot stop thinking about this, right? There's this like this, wait, so I can connect this and that, and then there's like I put that one in, and like, right? So like simple ideas like the hot pluggability, it's just an idea that we said like, wait, that should be possible, right? And then Ryan went in and was like, oh yeah, totally. Like, why should that not be hot pluggable? Or running Mujina on an S19, right? We always thought, oh, we need to run this on a specific Raspberry Pi, like my Libreboard. But he was like, no, wait, this should be possible directly. Points his AI agent to it, compiled it for the CPU there. We run it on it. And that's like, I think we're really in this world where right now we laid the ground base a little bit, and just the innovations are overtaking each other faster. And even ourselves, sometimes we have a hard time to stay up to date what's possible and what's the current status of all of this.
Yeah, so you're just building to solve a problem, and the bonus will be when it all comes together functional and hits a block that one day, and I'm sure you'll be ecstatic. But like for me, it's just like a symbolic, like what will that mean, right? Because you're like, I was tangentially aware for like, I guess almost since the start of like what you guys were doing, but I think this conversation that we're having now kind of is fully making me aware of the magnitude and the importance and like the reality of what this is going to bring into the world in our little niche world, right? That's what's really kind of stuck in my mind right now is like, okay, I was aware of it and that it was game changing and powerful, but the details of like what all is it going to unlock, I think is what's going to blow people's minds. It's like enlightening me right now. So fantastic. Let's jump to the actually one more question before we do jump. You can tell this isn't scripted. It's just from the heart. I would assume not that you would, and I don't foresee anybody wanting to commit this sort of grave sin given all the open source spirit of stuff that we're talking about. But could you, in theory, flash LuxOS or Brains to the Libreboard instead of using Mugina?
No, because it's not open source, right? So the problem is the CPU architecture of the Libreboard is another one than what we have on these miners. And so, no, I cannot install LuxOS Brains. If they would be open source, yes, you can ask your agents to take the LuxOS or the Brains source code and deploy it on a Raspberry Pi or on the Libreboard. But because they decided that this is not going to be open source, they're never going to run on Libreboard. Because now they themselves could possibly do that, right? Mm-hmm. Because they have access to their source code. But unless they decide to do this, no, it will not happen, because the source code is the thing that will unlock this. And I think it's going to be very interesting. Like you mentioned before, like all these proprietary firmware providers, it's going to be interesting because if honestly, the same with the hardware, like the same with Bitmain, if they don't join us, we're going to destroy them. Because as soon as these people realize what Mujina can do, and also the flexibility that it allows you to do it with, I don't see a reason why everybody will switch to it. Because the other cool thing is, right, they all take dev fees. If you use LuxOS or Brains, they all take up to 2% off your hash rate. It's just theirs. And with Mujina, 0 dev fee. because it's open source. Like, even if we would add a dev fee, you could just go in it and remove it. Like, there's no way for us to, or for anybody to force you to give up some of your hash rate.
So it's removing any dependency and any desire or need to even, like these things all exist for each other and sort of along with each other at this point. All four of these inventions. Okay. Yeah. Beautiful. Love it. All right. So the last part the sovereign mining stack.
Yeah. So the last one is called HydraPool, and it's basically a pool implementation. Now, some people might say, why do we need another open source pool? There are already. And that's correct. There are open source pools out there. The problem is these pools, a CK pool, for example, have been maintained by only one person. And any project that has been maintained by only one person, the problem is there's a lot of institutional knowledge just in that person. And so CK pool, for example, has a very, very little documentation. So if you want to change it, even though with agent help or agentic help with AI, it's going to be extremely hard because, and it's also written in a programming language, C, C++, that is not really so widely used anymore. And so, if you want to add any additional features, you want to plug this in, right? Let's say you want to do projects like the hash pool that automatically gives out cashew-related things for your hashes, or like we have all kind of other ideas to like connect or do the pool with the hashes to do other stuff, like verifying them or like forwarding them to another pool. Or like, again, the possibilities around pools are massive. It's going to be very hard with the current pool implementations, even though they are open source. So
shout out quickly to VNPRC. We love hash pool here. Not a lot of love has gone their way yet. They're still relatively unknown.
Yeah.
But I was actually the first person to ever have him on the podcast. And so we're big fans, big supporters, big love of what he's building too. So it's cool that you also know of what VNPRC is doing.
Yes. And so we decided, or the 256 Foundation decided, to build a new open source pool. Zhongli is the engineers behind. It's built completely in Rust. It's called HydraPool, and it's an open source pool built from scratch up. Obviously, we look at a lot of the other pool implementations because, fun fact, the protocol that the firmware talks with the pool, Stratum V1, is not documented. There is no official documentation of Stratum V1. So basically, the only way to learn this is to look existing pool implementations and just build one, take a miner, connect to it, and see what happens. There's no way for you to test this. And so there is obviously Stratum V2. That one is properly documented and has everything. But what we're also building is what we call Stratum 1.5, which is basically a proper documented version of Stratum V1 that has a documentation, and HydraPool is going to be a reference implementation of that. Mujina will also be a reference implementation of that on the firmware side, so that if people want to build on top of Stratum V1, they can, even though like there's a movement into going into V2. That is very exciting. But we also know that Stratum V1 is probably going to be around for a long time still. So that's what Stratum 1.5 is about, is to do a standardization. Because again, it was extremely painful for Zhongli to build HydraPool because he literally had no idea. Like, we had a time where he just asked people, like, do you have what miners do you have at home? Please point to this pool for a couple of minutes. I just want to see what they're doing, because that was the only way. And there is a lot of miners out there, right? There's a lot of firmware. There's a lot of different miners. And so, that was the other reason that we built that.
Painstaking work, but they're not doing it for you, as in these closed source proprietary, setups. So, we needed people like y'all to actually get in there and break it down for everybody, and then document it and gift it to the world. So amazing that you all decided to do that. So that's huge. So that's the self-sovereign mining stack for the home miner right there. I mean, just absolutely incredible. If you guys don't have chills down your spine listening to that, I don't think you have a pulse. So very exciting stuff. And I believe there's another 256 Toahash
Correct.
Coming up. So the floor is yours. Shill away.
Yes. So there is, before the Thames, so that's the there is twice a year, there is NEMS, the National Energy Mining Summit, and there's TEMS, the Texas Energy and Mining Summit. There is the Telehash, which is a one-day event where I think this year it's on the 19th of May. Google Telehash, don't take me on that. But basically, we're going to have a one-day event where you can send all your hash rate to our pool, which is going to be a hydro pool. We have a hydro pool running, obviously. And it's a fundraiser, right? So we're trying to solo block another block to fund more capabilities for the 256 Foundation so that we can accelerate this even faster, make even more things, bring even more engineers, try even more stuff to accelerate this open source Bitcoin mining hardware. So if you go to the 256foundation.org website, you will find all the information about the Telehash there, and bring your hash rate. All you have to do is change the pool on your miner. If you want, you can also do like a fractional, like some firmware allow you to send only a fractional. It really doesn't matter. From a half a terahash to 10 exahash, we're ready. We tested in the last telehash. We had more than exahash pointing to that pool. We know it does work. And so, yeah, mine a block together, help us accelerate this hardware and software revolution that we're working on to eventually, right? My end goal, I will not stop until every house in the world heats their water, heats their house with a Bitcoin miner. That's the end goal, and we're not going to stop until we're there.
Hell yeah, man. I love it. Man, this has already quickly become one of my favorite episodes, and we're not even close to done yet. So, so exciting.
I do have one more thing.
Yes, please.
Yes. So I talked about these 4 projects. One of the problem is, right, it's like, how do you show them up? So what we built, that was for the Bitcoin conference 2 weeks ago, I built the DoomAxe, which is basically a hardware version of all the 4 projects together. So what we have inside, I'll try to show this here on screen. So we have on the left side, the green thing, that's the Libreboard. It runs a Bitcoin node, a full node. It runs the pool, and it runs Mugina, so it's a completely solo miner. On the right side, we have a DumaX, which is in this case it represents a hash board. Right? It's not an Ember One. The problem is with an Ember One, it uses a lot more power because for the keen eye on top there's a battery. So this whole thing is completely battery powered, and it runs with Wi-Fi. So all it needs is an internet connection. It runs its own Bitcoin node. It has its own pool, and it mines to itself. And because it's a Raspberry Pi, right, we have a full touchscreen display on it. So I'm showing here the dashboard that we're also using for the Telehash. And because I wanted to show that you can also build additional things, right? So we have like a little 8x8 LED matrix. Plus, we also have a little display that home miners specifically have been waiting for years to have Bitcoin miners with a little display, because what's the IP address of your miner, right? So this is running on there. I hope we can see this. So in this case, it actually shows us the battery. It shows us the Bitcoin node and all kind of stuff. And it's called the DoomAxe because the big question was, right, you have a little display. Can you actually play Doom on it? And of course, you can play Doom on your Bitcoin miner now, the first one. And that shows the power of open source, right? The fact that I can take this and I can build whatever I want without anybody stopping me to do whatever I need to, whatever I want to, with my Bitcoin miners, with displays and connectors to whatever I want. And the really crazy thing, I built this whole thing in 2 days with the help of AI. So all the displays, all of it, I wrote 0 lines of code. All I did is saying, hey, here I connected this display to my Libreboard. Here is Mujina software. Go and show this information on the display. It went off. It understood the Mujina firmware. It knew how to talk to the DumaX because it also can talk to the DumaX. And it built it all myself, or for me. And I didn't have to build anything. And that's really like, it shows the power of where we live today, the fact that everything is open source. I can do it myself, or with AI's help, I can build hardware to the specific need, right? And people, again, they ask like, oh, when can I buy a DoomAxe? And it's like, you've probably never built, but you can build it yourself. Yes. Or you can convince somebody to build it for you and then sell it to you. That's what we're building here. That's really the stuff that is happening in the world of open source Bitcoin mining and software right now.
Hold that beautiful creation up for us one more time.
Yes.
We'll get a thumbnail here. Beautiful. Look at that. If that's not the coolest thing you guys have ever seen, I imagine the reaction to it. I mean, I know what the reaction was online, but you brought that to the conference,
yes,
as well, right? What was the reaction there?
It was really interesting. There were definitely people that I showed it to them, and you could see in their eyes, like the gears turned, and I was like, "Wait, so this is open source, and I can connect whatever I want, and I can just add a display, or like, what if I want to connect a pump?" And I'm like,
yes,
it's possible. Yes, right. Yeah. And so they were like they could not
what do
find
I do
words.
With that?
Yes, yes, yeah. It was this like, I need to like process this first, that this is now possible. There's also a lot of other people, like the Bitcoin conference has also just like a lot of normies there. And for them, it was kind of hard to understand. Like, why do you need a Bitcoin miner with a battery? Was a question. Or like, when will this find a block? And with a DumaX, right now we're like at 16 to 17,000 years of chance that you will find a block right now with 1 terahash, which that DumaX has. And the people were like, but that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, I know, but this is also not for you, right? So like, this is just it's a proof of concept. It's a reference implementation of the capability. But this is, at least as far as I know, since many, many, many years, the first completely open source Bitcoin mining hardware and software device. And you can just connect whatever you want to it and do with it whatever you want. And I think I'm convinced, I think we can, as you mentioned, you can hear it from me, but I really hope that a lot of people realize what this allows to and help us. Right? You can, again, if you have a Bitcoin miner, help us in the telehash. If you just want to donate money, that's also possible. You can donate on 256 Foundation. The foundation is actually a 501c3, whatever it is. So all the donations are tax deductible. So if you have a bit of too much taxes to pay, you can help offset your tax cost with a donation. So yeah, help us, join us, bring ideas. Please, reach out either through the GitHub repositories. We have a forum. You can reach us on Twitter. If you have any idea or any questions, we're building this in open for this specific reason, that everybody can see what's going on. Everybody can voice their opinions or their ideas, because we're building it for all of us. Right? We're not building this just for the big miners or for the small miners or the medium miners. We're building this for everybody. And that means we all have to build it in the open, and we have to build it with everybody's in mind.
I love that you got the two extremes of the reactions, kind of, because you were at the Bitcoin shitcoin conference there in Vegas, yes. Where like there's some people that are like, oh my God, this is incredible. And then the opposite side where like the sheer magnitude of this just whoosh, right over their head, and never a second thought will be paid. So that's hilarious. And I'm sure it's humbling in the positive way, and then humbling on the other side where you're like, wow, there's a large percentage of people who don't give a shit. They don't grasp it. They're just going to go, play with their shit coins or mine shit coins, do what they do. And then there's other people who are like, just marveling at the brilliance of what you guys have created. And I just love that you have a proof of concept. Like you said, people are kind of not fully grasping why it's important if it's just like one chip in there, and it's the chances are so crazy. And it's like we kind of experienced that recently because we had Pizandi on, and his 3D Bitcoin, and people kind of a lot of, again, people absolutely loved it. That episode got featured on Tom's Hardware. It blew up. We were on MSN.com for the podcast episode. People just took it and ran with it. We had never experienced that from an episode before, but people kind of saw the brilliance of that hardware. But then there's also people that are like, well, what's the point? Why not just rent or mine, without the 3D printer there, you're never going to hit a block or mine any sort of significant amount of sats. Well, it's a couple of, I mean, what is it, 2 months since we put that episode out, and now he's got a 6 terahash device out there. So what are you going to say now? Well, he's already up to 6 terahash, proof of concept, live in the flesh.
Correct.
So what happens when he has access to an Ember One, 12 chips, and he puts a beast inside of a 3D printer? Well, it's fucking like, let's go, right? Like we're on the cusp of something great for all of this. What you guys are building is going to allow builders like him and others in this space. If there's anything I really have come to love and appreciate about our space, is that you think you might have thought of, one thing, but then there's somebody over here that's like, but I have this use case for it. I have this need for it. And what you guys have built is the launch pad for all of that to become possible. Oh, you need that? You can do that. You want that? You've got no problem. Whereas up until now, we are just completely strapped. We're limited by that, and we have to work with what we've got. But you guys are essentially blowing the gates off of this thing and just saying, whatever you can come up with in your nerd brain and your tinkerer, engineering, because we all come at this, you have your HVAC guys, you have your automation guys, you have your firmware, software, hardware, homestead, agricultural people, beef jerky drying, like you have
everything.
Anything you can think of. There is somebody using a Bitcoin miner for it. And now the stack that they're going to have access to is unlimited.
Correct. Yeah, no, that's what we're working on to build. Right? It's a rocky road. 2 days ago, I just burned an S19 hashboard because, right, you have to think about a lot of things. I played with Mugina running on an S19, and the fan controller didn't correctly work, and I didn't have an emergency stop in it, and it just burned. I joke I found the flamethrower mode of Mugina, because there were literally flames coming out of my S19. But right, that's also the thing that we're not allowed to be afraid of, but this, you've learned from this, and we're building better software because of that. And with all these big miners, they all had this already. I totally believe that Bitmain, when they built the S19s, they burned a lot of hashboards. But because it's not open source, we have no idea, right? That's the thing. So everybody that starts basically starts from scratch. And with open source, we can share this common knowledge. As we're sharing the common knowledge about money and Bitcoin itself, Bitcoin is open source as a protocol, obviously, and without that, it would not exist today. And so we're just trying to replicate what already happened. So many numerous times. Like I said, I've been now for more than 25 years in open source, and it's eating everything. The only thing, yes, hardware, it takes a lot longer than software, but with
Still
the DoomAxe, we're seeing we're chipping away slowly, piece by piece, and eventually it's going to be everywhere. And we're going to ask ourselves, when we look back, we tell our grandchildren, right, well, when we still had computers without mining chips in it, or we still heated our house with just electrical heat that didn't generate us any money, or we paid back the solar to the grid and got nothing for it. That's the stories we're going to talk. And our kids are going to be there and saying, yeah, grandpa, just shut up. We live in a much better world. And that's what we're building today.
Yeah, if you guys go back, or if you've watched a lot of our episodes, you've seen me say, specifically comes to mind in episodes with Tyler Stevens and Dylan from the space. I think we are 5 to 10 years, maybe conservatively. Maybe I'm just kind of wishful thinking on that, but where you're the only person that's also just come right out and said it. That we're going to be living in a world where it's going to be so painfully obvious, and we're going to look at each other and go, how the fuck was our house not running things that pay us when we could have been doing that, right? So we're starting to see it now with some of these inventions that are coming out, but pretty soon, everything that will also mine Bitcoin. And I think we're going to look back in 10 years and go, oh my God, it's amazing we did not live that way.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be an interesting moment, like, because we're seeing it now in our space, but then the everyday person through hash rate heating is starting to pick up on, oh, I need heat anyways. I can offset my heating costs or turn a profit for a need that I already have. Like, I'm going to have to pay anyways. And so what happens when everything in your house that has that same capability is now producing you money? It's going to be a no-brainer. But I think we're seeing it now because we're actively involved in this little bubble. And I think the normies are going to see it, and it's going to just be like, of course we're connected to the internet all the time. It's like, well, of course all the appliances in my house mine Bitcoin.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, that's it.
I want to ask you, because like when you first started building this a year ago, Claude wasn't really I
No.
mean, it may have been a thing, but like it just kind of really came crashing on the scene like a couple months back.
Yeah, I think
There was
December was really the
ChatGPT and
big
things.
change. No, like in the beginning, it almost sounds crazy now, but yeah, it was good old electrical engineer or PCB building, where so I used one of the good things that is really cool. So the Raspberry Pi actually released an I/O board that shows how to connect these compute modules to Ethernet ports and all these different things. And that they open sourced. So originally I really planned to take it and just like move it around a little bit, and then I realized, nope, I actually have to start from scratch. But I used that a lot as an idea, and that definitely saved me probably 2 or 3 months of time. So again, like I stand on the shoulders of giants there, Raspberry Pi deciding to open source their I/O board because they knew people want to build different ones. And it's PCB design still today. You basically need to you can use the help with AI to find components, right? So like that was already possible at the time, is to ask like, I need a USB controller with this many ports and this voltage. And so it helped a little bit on that. It did not really help at that point to actually create the schema. That became better. We're not there yet 100%. So you still need to read a lot of the data sheets to understand how to connect these different components together. And then after you have the schema, you go to the PCB design, and then you need to place, and that's today, at least in KiCad and stuff, is all manual work. So you place these different components, and then you trace them or you route the different connections with each other you need to think about, right? Because in the Libreboard has 6 layers. So you have 6 layers that you need to think about how to connect all of them. And that's really like a big puzzle. It's like a very complex puzzle where every piece that you set influences everyone around it. But yeah, that took probably the longest. It's just like tracing all of these stuff. But yes, there are already now the first AIs that can fully create very simple PCB schemas and actual PCB designs. And I think this is just going to accelerate even faster. So I totally believe that in the future, you will take the Libreboard design, you go to an AI and saying, hey, can you remove me the fan controller, or I want a fan with, I need to control 10 fans, or can you add me this temperature sensor, or whatever. Like you just tell it, and then AI will go off and it will create the schema, the PCB, it will create a 3D model, it will ship it off, and 2 weeks later you will get the PCB and fully assembled. And yeah, so you don't need to actually learn any of the stuff that I had to learn at all, because you're just going to talk to an AI. But that's exactly the exciting part about all of this, so that people can just build their own hardware for whatever they need. Because today, we basically depend on some other company building a hardware for your specific need. And I don't think we all have the same needs, right? And
clearly not.
That's what's gonna change. That we just build like in software today already, with AI, we can just build our own dashboards and tools and whatever. In hardware, the same. So I totally could imagine a world where, you don't buy off-the-shelf products anymore. You have a 3D printer. You maybe have like pick and place machines or things like that, or there are services that do this, and you go to an AI, you tell it what you need in terms of hardware, it will create it all, and you will get it shipped at home a couple of weeks later, and you have your own hardware that solves this specific problem for your use case. And yes, probably the AI will by default saying, hey, you have a heat use case, why don't we add a Bitcoin miner in there? Because you're going to get some sats back. So that's what I think really is going to happen, that actually most people will not even know that their whatever heating device, again, hairdryer, water kettle, baby bottle warmer, towel rack, 3D printer, whatever you can imagine that heats something, it will just have a Bitcoin miner in it by default, because why wouldn't you? It's stupid to just
For sure.
blast the heat into the world without getting paid for it. So yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean that sort of a future that you described for hardware is especially interesting, because as you said, that's sort of the hardest thing, right? Like the software iterations and all these things, it is easily accelerated by things like AI, but the hardware kind of takes a little bit longer, but you can still see it coming. Your creation is in the hardware realm.
Mhm.
The Ember One is in the hardware realm, but there's those two other components in this stack, the Hydrapool and Mujina, the firmware. How much collectively do you think that Claude Code and these different AIs coming out changed the game, or like had an impact or accelerated or made better what you guys were already working on? I guess probably more specifically, again, in the software firmware side of things, but on the whole of the self-sovereign mining stack, do you think this really helped accelerate things quite a
yeah.
bit?
I would
Yeah.
totally say it accelerates. I wouldn't say it makes it better. It just makes
Okay.
it a lot faster, right? Like,
Sure.
in my own situation, right? For example, I have an S19 with hash boards that have picks on it. So there is a voltage controller on the hash board itself. Scott, that built the first iteration of S19 with Mugina, his hash boards did not have a pick, because Bitmain, for some reason, decided to make completely different hash boards in S19J Pros. Like, who knows why? But they decided to do so. And so he had a version that I didn't have, and I wanted to do the same. And at one point, I installed his tool, and it didn't work at all. And honestly, at that point, I would have stopped. I don't know. I do not have the capabilities to debug an I2C by myself. Like, normally, I would have needed a logic analyzer to analyze a regular miner, like that, how it does it. So I would need to install the regular firmware again, analyze the communication protocol, see how it's doing it, and then try to figure out what it does, then install Mugina again and analyze it. And while I probably could figure out, if you'd ask me, this would take me weeks. But all I did, I went to my AI and saying, hey, here, I think there's a difference here. Can you research into online if there's a different hashboard? And he came back and said, yep, okay, your hashboards, the model numbers that you gave me, they have a pick on it. The other one does not have a pick. Let me see. And so it looked in the world by itself, and it found like some old source code, or some people reverse engineered a little bit of the protocol. And then it actually installed LuxOS and analyzed the communication protocol between LuxOS and the hashboard, right? Because it's open source. So it can actually, in Linux, you can debug all the protocols. So it added the debugger in there, sniffed it, figured out how LuxOS talks to these picks, and came back and said, okay, now I know how this works. It wrote a little test script just to start the pick to see if it responds. And a couple of seconds later, it had this. Then he took the script and he converted it into Mugina. And now there's a pull request on the Mugina GitHub project that supports S19s without picks. That's the one from Scott. And with picks, that's the one from me. And that's like, I would not have had this capability. I would have stopped. And so it's somebody else that probably has this capability of the logic analyzer and all that stuff.
Sure.
They could have done it. Like, I'm not saying this would not have happened with AI, but I do believe this probably happened now 6 months earlier.
Well, you got to connect. You got to find that person.
Yeah.
You got to connect with them. You've got to convince them that, hey, you should help me for this open source project, which I'm not going to be able to provide you money for necessarily, and compensate your time and your energy and your brilliance. You don't have to worry about any of that, because I feel like that's a huge bottleneck. Is like, some of this stuff, there's only a couple handfuls of people with certain technical capabilities,
Yep.
whether it's on the software, firmware, engineering, hardware side, like for a lot of these things in Bitcoin, whether it's the privacy layer or, the so many different areas of understanding, right?
Yeah.
Like to find those people and then convince them to give you their expertise and help you and all of this is like,
impossible.
it would kill so many of these great ideas dead in the water.
Yep.
And now instead you have an autonomous AI agent that you can prompt and just get through that bottleneck and that barrier, and away we go. So I mean, that is just incredible.
So yeah, I mean, for your specific question, I totally think that like since now 2 or 3 months ago, where these tools are incredibly good, what I can see, like even this box would have probably without AI taken me at least 2 or 3 weeks, and now it took me 2 evenings basically. Like I think we're on an acceleration path of easily 10x, like probably even more. And right now we're only 4 people that are working on this because we do not have fully validated hardware yet. Like that's the other thing. Eventually, in a couple of weeks or maybe months, we have fully validated hardware, and we're gonna create a couple of them and give it to others. So just imagine now, also let's say 10 more people with 10x capabilities, right? That's what I'm saying. Like this is now it's gonna go very fast. Like we're really, really close for the fireworks just to like light up and just going extremely fast, and people will be able to build whatever they want. The hardware is there, the software is there, the testings are there. We have the chips now, right? That was the biggest unlock as well, is that we had never had these chips. Now we can just desolder them from S19s. It's a pain, and I really call any company in the world to the Canaan, to the Bitmains, to the Watts miners, please, please, please sell us the individual chips with a data sheet. The first company that is going to do that is going to have a massive success because the whole community will rally behind that company. We're trying to convince them. It's hard, right? Because these companies have just been so long just selling whole machines, and now these crazy people coming and they want to buy individual chips. I mean, that's sorcery.
I think we've all been trying to convince Canaan to be the ones. And look, I would wager they are probably the closest to making that leap, given that they're attending the Heat Punk conference and they're coming on my podcast here, and they're in communications with Scott and the whole like their toes are in the water. They're on the edge. They just gotta fucking take the leap. And like my point to Lee, we had the VP of Canaan on the podcast, and I'm just trying to push him like, come on, man, like you're gonna have the most degenerate, supportive, like brilliant people. And I think to like a for-profit company, they're like, I don't know if we want that. And it's like, you do want that, trust me. So I hope that they continue to consider it.
Plus, there's also other ones, right? I want to give a shout out to Proto. They just I can't show you right now, but one of the fun things that happened at the Bitcoin conference was Proto just released their fleet software. So that's a fleet management. So it's a competitor to Foreman, completely open source. And I walk up to the Proto booth with my DumaX, and they're like, so Proto is open source. This runs Linux. This should be able to install Fleet. So I went home to my hotel room, said, hey, here is Fleet. And I knew Fleet doesn't have support for Mugina. So I said, here is Fleet, here is Mugina. Go and build an integration between Fleet and Mugina. And it started the Mugina. Mugina, by the way, has a CPU miner. So we can mine from your CPU. You will never find a block, but for testing purposes, it's perfect. So it wrote a Mugina integration into Fleet. And then I told it, can you now install it on the DumaX? It knows what the DumaX is. It connected via SSH and installed Fleet with Mugina support on it. And all of this happened, by the way, while I was at dinner with the team. I came back 2 hours later. I looked at my screen and Fleet was running on the little display, and I logged in and it showed me Mugina, and I was like, this is fucking crazy. Like I one-shotted Mugina support running on the DumaX, and the next day I walked to the Fleet booth, to the Proto booth, and said, here
it is.
Fleet running. You did a good job. That's only possible because it's open source. And so they understood it as well. Like they are clearly open source people. Like, that shows them the fact that they're open sourcing everything. And I really also hope that they are gonna sell us individual chips. They have been mentioning that. Again, I understand, right? They are publicly traded companies. I know how crazy hard this is, and all the approvals and all that stuff, but there are glimpses. And again, 2-3 years ago, all we had is Bitmain chips that we roughly understood how they work. It got a lot of better, but it's still a lot of pain to buy. Like, I always explain people, think about, you need a wheel for a car, but instead of buying the wheel individually, you have to buy a brand new car just to take off the wheels. Right? Yeah. That's basically what we're doing today. People are buying brand new S21 Pros, never plug them in, take the hashboards out, and desolder their chips. And the whole rest, all the engineering for all the other stuff, you just throw away. It goes into the trash because it's completely unusable.
And people still have the nerve to cry over the cost of a BitX when you know how much work goes into doing all of that to get a single chip. Yeah, it's crazy.
And so that's obviously still, it's, for the longest time, this was the biggest bottleneck for unlocking all of this. Luckily, this can be a lot better, right? Because we have so much access to these S19 chips, we understand them well, and now companies are thinking about selling them. So it's getting there. It's really on this. There's multiple unlocks that, like, I look at this space and there's so many things happening at the same time, and you're like, wait, this is like an atomic bomb where the individual pieces together cannot be critical or super critical, but all together, if you smash them together at the right time, all the energy together unleashes. And I think we're like weeks or months before they all come together. And
I love it, brother.
What's going to happen? I have no idea.
We're going to find out.
We're going to find out, but I can tell everybody this is going to be very, very exciting. And for all the people that have been wondering, can I heat my house? Can I heat my pool? Can I do whatever? Everybody will get their answer, because the answer is always going to be yes.
Amazing, brother. I'm so excited for all of this. I can't wait to get my hands on some of your guys' hardware and just run everything here. We love testing our stuff. We love showing it off. That's why we have people like you, the builders, to get the deep dive, to get the education out there so everybody can be excited. And I'm excited to get it and test it and play with it and run it and support it. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to own it and run it. So hopefully you can get my hands on some of that. And guys, I want to say that I truly hope you're inspired by this and fired up for what is coming in the open source. The home mining revolution is full. It's alive, it's palpable, it's here, you're on the cusp of it. And it's because of people like Schnitzel. And man, I just want to say thank you so much for all that you've done and that you took the time to come on here and share that with us. And guys, please find a way to donate, point your hash rate at the 256 telehash, get these guys more funding, and just give them all of your support. We've got to wrap up this episode. I could talk for hours and hours with this guy. I'm going to go on the record and just say it before it even wraps up. This has been one of my all-time favorite episodes.
Cool, thank you.
So, absolute pleasure having you on, Schnitzel. And quickly tell people where they can find you, and we'll put everything in the show notes.
Yeah, you find me under the name Schnitzel on X and Nostr and all the social medias, and you will find the 256 Foundation on 256foundation.org. And also on there's a telehash. It's going to happen in 2 weeks. So if you have a little hash rate, just point it during the 8 hours, or you can actually point it all year long. The pool is running all the time, and we're trying to find a solo block all year, but the telehash is the 8 hours, I think, and we already got some exciting commitments from some bigger mining companies that said, yes, we're going to bring. So we'll see. We hope we're going to crack the exahash again, because with one exahash, I think we have a 1 in 17 chance to find a block. So it's not 17,000 years. It's 1 in 17 in 8 hours. Good. So
that's amazing.
We're hoping we're going to find another block. It's going to be an exciting time, because also the the idea of a telehash happens now more and more. We have the Bitcoin veterans, which I'm also part of. We're also doing telehashes on like Memorial Days and stuff like that. So this idea also comes up to donate hash rate to a good cause. So this is a good cause. It doesn't cost you anything. All it costs you is to change your miners. And if you want to, if anybody out here has a lot of hash rate and want to talk to us and want to test things, we have that as well. So talk to us. We can talk and figure out that even your 20 exahash that you have to laying around, we can handle it. So
he's not even asking for donations. He's just asking for hash rate, guys.
Correct. That's
nice
all
and
we
simple.
Need.
You gotta love it. Schnitzel, my brother, thank you so much. Much love and gratitude to you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for building all the things that you build. We're going to have you on again, and let's stay in touch, and we'll get you on here as many times as you'd like to come on, because I'm sure people are going to just eat this episode up, and they're going to be so bullish on what's being delivered here.
Perfect. I'm happy to come again and show where we are, what we have built, and on the path. Like I said, I'm not going to stop until we have a Bitcoin miner heating all the houses in the world.
A wonderful and noble goal. Guys, drop a like, a comment. Let me know if you are going to be running Mujina, Hydropool, Ember One, and the amazing Libreboard by the one and only Schnitzel, who you had the pleasure of deep diving with on the podcast today. This has been the Home Mining Podcast by Solo Satoshi, and I'll see you in the next one.